UK.
If Trump hits Iran's power grid even once, could that single strike set off a chain of blackouts that ripples across the entire Gulf in a matter of hours? As Tehran threatens to turn the Gulf dark, is Iran now openly signaling that any attack on its power network will be met with a region-wide blackout campaign? And by publicly naming power and desalination hubs in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait, is Tehran drawing a target map for the next phase of this war? With Barakah's nuclear plant, Jebel Ali's desalination giant, and Ras Laffan's gas hub all on the list, is Iran quietly warning that every Gulf lifeline is now fair game? After Hormuz, are we watching the war shift into a new phase where power plants, desalination stations, and gas hubs become the real front lines? On March 22nd, Iran warned that if the US hits its power plants, it will answer by striking American-linked infrastructure in return. Iran's military said that in such a scenario, energy hubs, IT nodes, and desalination sites would all be fair targets for retaliation. The IRGC warned that an attack on Iran's power network would not stay local, but trigger a region-wide response across multiple Gulf states. Just hours later, state media pushed out a detailed list of Gulf power and water facilities that Iran says are already in its crosshairs. Near Al-Khobar, Iran highlights a major gas-fired plant with more than 4,000 megawatts of capacity as a prime potential target. It also flags Ras Tanura in Sharqiya province, a key oil hub tied into wider power and export infrastructure networks. In the UAE, the list starts with the Barakah nuclear plant in Abu Dhabi, which generates around 5,600 megawatts for the grid. It then points to the Jebel Ali complex, where gas-fired generation is tightly coupled with huge desalination systems that supply water. Iran's media also name-checks the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, one of the largest solar energy projects anywhere in the world. For Qatar, Ras Laffan's vast gas-based power plant is singled out as a backbone site for national electricity supply. The Al Hawl facility, combining power generation and desalination south of Doha, is also listed as a possible target. In Kuwait, the Al Zour South and North plants are described as critical pillars of the national grid. Sharqiya Energy Park, home to major solar and wind projects, rounds out the list as a symbol of Kuwait's future energy mix. Tehran's blackout threat followed Trump's vow that he would hit and obliterate Iran's power plants if Hormuz remained shut. He promised to go after various power plants, starting with the biggest one first, making electricity a declared war target. Trump then gave Iran a 48-hour deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face those strikes. His wording has been read as a veiled reference to major sites such as the Damavand and Ramin power complexes. Commentators also noted that Bush's nuclear plant was openly mentioned as a possible target, raising fears of radiological risk. Iran, for its part, operates nearly 100 gas-fired power plants across a sprawling national network, making decapitation strikes hard to complete. Analysts say that hitting Iran's power grid alone would not instantly choke off global oil volumes. But if Iran replies by striking Gulf power, gas, and desalination hubs, the secondary effects could unleash a full-blown global energy crisis. All this is happening around Hormuz, still the critical artery for a large share of global oil and LNG shipments. Escalation around energy infrastructure risks knocking out refineries, terminals, and ports that global supply chains depend on. Simultaneous hits on power plants and desalination facilities could paralyze Gulf economies by cutting both electricity and drinking water. Analysts warn that in a worst-case blackout scenario, the shockwaves would spread far beyond Iran and the Strait, into energy prices, trade routes, and domestic politics worldwide.
In breaking news coming in from Tehran amidst the current ongoing war situation, it has come to light that massive blackouts across Tehran have taken place after US airstrikes targeted the city's electrical grid. Mr. Sanjeev Srivastav, I'd request your comments on this.
Well, as the world wonders whether Donald Trump is winding down or ramping up his war with Iran, the Pentagon is expected to send thousands of additional U.S. troops to the Middle East. The Wall Street Journal and Reuters are reporting that about 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division are expected to be deployed to the region. That news comes just a day after President Trump postponed threats to bomb Iranian power plants, saying that there had been what he called productive talks with Iran. Now, Iran has denied that any direct talks have taken place. We can cross now to The Guardian's Washington bureau chief, David Smith. David, what has the White House said about these reports that more troops are headed to the Middle East?
The White House doesn't want to comment on the record about its war plans, but there have been multiple reports in U.S. media suggesting that the number of troops is not quite as high as those reports indicated. It looks like maybe more than 1,000 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division preparing to be sent to the Middle East. This is an infantry division that specializes in forcible entry and parachute assaults. So it certainly seems to be a threat from Trump to potentially target Iranian territory and put some boots on the ground, despite opposition within his own party. However, we are in a situation here in the fog of war, with still a lot of contradictory signals. Donald Trump, you see there speaking in the Oval Office a short time ago, saying that we've already won, saying that Iran wants to make a deal badly. Even saying that the Iranians had given him some kind of very pleasant gift that made him happy, that was quite lucrative. Also, there are reports of a 15-point plan that Trump has shared with Israel. And yet, at the same moment, Iran continued firing off missiles today, hitting Iraq and Israel. And the Iranian government denies that these talks are taking place or imminent. And I think part of the confusion is that on the Iranian side, because several officials have been killed, it's not entirely clear who's in charge for them to speak with one voice. And ironically, even with the US as well, there's some confusion over whether Trump or Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner or Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance is going to lead these peace negotiations.
Yeah, I think the fog of war is definitely the right metaphor there. Is there any sense, David, what these additional troops might be doing? Is the idea that they might help secure traffic in the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I think the most likely scenario is that these troops would try to capture the island of Haag, which is a key oil terminal for Iran and absolutely crucial to Iran's own energy supply. Trump previously bombed military installations there and said he would leave the oil facilities alone. But we could see a further offensive here with US troops trying to gain control of it. And indeed, the point of that, the logic of that would be to then use that as leverage to exert pressure on Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, is that crucial choke point at the moment that threatens to cause chaos in energy markets. It's something that some critics of Trump say he didn't completely think through, that Iran had the ability to do that. And seizing Haag Island might be a way to force Iran's hand. However, there are some military observers who say it would be a very dangerous mission. There could be American loss of life, and that would certainly play very badly back at home.
Okay, The Guardian's Washington bureau chief, David Smith. David, thanks as always. We appreciate it.
The U.S. Army is changing who can sign up. The Army is expanding eligibility, raising the maximum enlistment age from 35 to 42. It's also changing its policy on marijuana. Now, recruits with a single past conviction for possession of drug paraphernalia will no longer need a waiver. Before this, applicants had to get approval from the Pentagon, wait up to 2 years, and pass a drug test before moving forward. However, recruits with repeated drug offenses will still need a waiver. These updates come as the military works to boost recruitment while keeping fitness and readiness standards in place.
Iraq officially joins the war? Latest developments from March 24, 2026 are raising serious alarm across the region. Following deadly airstrikes on popular mobilization forces positions in Anbar and Mosul, Iraq's leadership has taken a decisive step. In an emergency session chaired by Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, the country's top security body authorized its forces to respond to attacks with all available means. This comes after a major strike killed at least 15 PMF fighters, including senior commander Saad al-Baiji, and wounded dozens more. Iraqi officials have directly blamed the United States, with some pointing to Israeli involvement, marking a sharp escalation in tone from Baghdad. The decision is being framed as self-defense, but its implications go far beyond that. Because the popular mobilization forces are not just militias, they are officially part of Iraq's state security apparatus. That means any attack on them is now treated as an attack on Iraq itself. And now, retaliation has formal backing. At the same time, Iraq is trying to balance on a razor's edge. The government has summoned both U.S. and Iranian representatives, filed complaints at the United Nations, and emphasized that only the state has the authority to decide war and peace. But on the ground, the situation is already shifting. In recent weeks, strikes have hit multiple locations across Iraq, while armed factions linked to the PMF have launched drone and rocket attacks on U.S. targets. Each exchange increases the risk of a wider escalation. This is the dangerous gray zone, where defensive authorizations can quickly turn into active conflict, where retaliation leads to counter-retaliation, and where the line between being involved and being at war starts to disappear. Iraq is now deeper in the conflict than at any point so far, and the next move could determine whether it becomes a full battle.
More U.S. troops are on the move to the Middle East as new questions emerge about talks to end the war with Iran. President Trump says negotiations are ongoing, but Iranian officials are painting a much different picture. NBC's Monica Alba is tracking the very latest developments from Washington, D.C.
Just over 3 weeks in.
The Trump administration pushing back publicly on reports of a 15-point plan to end the war in Iran.
I saw a 15-point plan that was floated in the media. I would caution reporters in this room from reporting about speculative points or speculative plans from anonymous sources.
But 3 sources tell NBC News the U.S. sent Iran a 15-point plan using Pakistan as a go-between. And President Trump alluded to a plan on Monday.
15 points. Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one.
Iran has always claimed it was not building a weapon. And today, Iran reportedly rejected the plan, according to an Iranian state television network citing a senior official. President Trump has been touting negotiations between the U.S. and Iran for days.
The United States has been engaged over the last 3 days in productive conversations,
though Iran has denied talks. And it's not clear who the U.S. is talking to since so many Iranian officials have been killed. And no one has seen the new supreme leader in public since he took over for his father. Meanwhile, the military buildup in the region begins, the president sending 1,000 soldiers to the Middle East. Republicans say the troop movement doesn't mean the U.S. will engage in a ground war.
The buildup of troops is very different than boots on the ground. We don't have boots on the ground. I don't think that's the intention, but I think Iran should watch that buildup.
Monica Alba, NBC News, the White House.
برای کسی که قصد تعدی و دستاوردی به خاک ایران رو داره.
Iran says it is ready for a ground war that Washington has not officially announced, but that regional capitals are increasingly gaming out as U.S. deployments expand. An informed Iranian military source told Tasnim news agency that Tehran has mobilized over 1 million fighters in preparation for a potential escalation. The source said discussions around a possible U.S. ground intervention in southern Iran have triggered a surge in mobilization, with ground forces preparing to deliver what he called a historic hell for any American troops entering Iranian territory. The mobilization, according to the source, is not limited to existing forces. Tasnim also claimed recruitment channels tied to the Basij, the IRGC, and the regular army were seeing a surge of volunteers, a detail no independent outlet has confirmed. The claim comes from Iranian state-aligned media and has not been independently verified. But it lands in a context where Reuters has reported the Trump administration is considering deploying thousands of U.S. troops to the region, and where Trump himself said he is not putting troops anywhere while adding, "If I were, I certainly would not tell you." The source also addressed Karg Island, the strategic oil export hub that handles about 90% of Iran's crude shipments. As U.S. options around Karg are being discussed, Iranian military-aligned media says the island has been reinforced with extra defenses and prepared for a costly landing, though those details remain unverified. If even part of that account is true, Karg looks less like a soft prize and more like the kind of target that could bleed an assault force on the way in. The island sits in the northern Persian Gulf, and any amphibious approach would have to cross waters that Iran has already demonstrated it can mine and disrupt. The source framed any American attempt to seize maritime routes as a self-destructive strategy. If that is their approach, he said, we are ready. Those claims remain inside Iranian military-aligned media. But the declared posture matches the broader pattern of the war. Iran converting every threatened asset into a fortified position and daring the United States to come closer. Trump addressed the situation from the other end of the spectrum. They are begging to make a deal, he said. Not me. They are begging to make a deal. He said Iran's regime is admitting to itself that it has been decisively defeated. He described the country as unable to make a comeback and said the United States is free to roam over their cities and towns, destroying nuclear weapons, missiles, and drones. He estimated the mission would take 4 to 6 weeks and said at 26 days in, the campaign is a lot ahead of schedule. He called Iran's negotiators great, but added, they are lousy fighters. Trump tied any deal to reopening Hormuz and argued Iran had built a mine-laying threat no normal actor would need, pointing to what he said were 22 mine-dropping vessels the U.S. had already destroyed. Trump's language is victory language. Iran's language is mobilization language. One side says the war is won. The other side says it is mobilizing 1 million people to fight. Both statements cannot be true simultaneously, but both are being broadcast to audiences that need to believe them.
The Wall Street Journal's fake news and all these stories that get printed like, oh, I want to make a deal. They are begging to make a deal, not me. They're begging to make a deal. And anybody that saw what was happening over there would understand why they want to make a deal. But they say, oh, we're not talking to them. Anybody would know that. And only a total fool. And they're not fools. They're very smart, actually, in a certain way. And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. They are begging to work out a deal. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we're willing to do that. They should have done that 4 weeks ago. They should have done it 2 years ago. Or they should have done it when we first came into office, because 2 years ago they had free reign under Biden. Sleepy Joe, worst president in the history of our country. What he allowed to happen to our country at the borders, and even with a thing like this. But not just him. Every president for 47 years, every president should have done this. They should have done it a long time ago, because you cannot give lunatics a nuclear weapon. The Iranian regime is now admitting to itself that they have been decisively defeated. They're saying to people, this is a disaster. They know it. That's why they're talking to us. They wouldn't talk otherwise. But they're talking to us because they've got a disaster in their hands. They're defeated. They can't make a comeback. We're free to roam over their cities and towns and destroy all of their crazy nuclear weapons and missiles and drones that they're building. And we're doing that. They now have a chance to make a deal, but that's up to them. And they'll tell you, we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they're negotiating. They've been obliterated. Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal. We'll see if we can make the right deal. And if they make the right deal, then the strait will open up. Hormuz Strait will open up. And even now, we don't know if there are any mines. You know, they have 22 they call mine droppers. Think of it. Who would have 22 mine droppers? There's a boat that drops mines. Who has 22 mine droppers? Except for people with very evil intention.
People like this, and now what I'm talking about is not the people of Iran. The people that run this country are radical Shia clerics. These are religious fanatics. Look what they are doing now, at their weakest point. This is the weakest Iran has ever been, and look at what they're doing. They're attacking embassies. They're attacking hotels. Imagine what these people would do if they had a nuclear weapon. That is an unacceptable risk for the world. By the way, the president's not just doing a favor to the United States and to our people. This is for the world. He defined very clearly on the first night of this operation what the goal was. We were going to destroy Iran's navy, and that is happening. We were going to, if it hasn't already happened, I'll let Pete speak to the specifics of it. We were going to destroy their missile launching capabilities. We're well on our way to achieving that goal. We were going to destroy the factory so they couldn't make more missiles and more drones. And that is moving forward. Every single objective the president clearly laid out on the first night of this operation is being effectuated. Again, Pete will speak to the specifics of it. This has been an incredibly successful operation. Every day, it may not get covered because, you know, we're unlike them. We're not bombing embassies and hotels. We're hitting military targets. But every day, the Department of War lets the drummer get wicked over every portion of Iran that has these military capabilities, and the results are going to bear fruit for the world. The world is going to be a safer and a better place when President Trump's mission here is achieved.
We estimated it would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to achieve our mission, and we're way ahead of schedule. If you look at what we've done in terms of the destruction of that country, I mean, we're way ahead.
But now we turn to the war in Iran, where Israel is targeting the regime's top nuclear assets. And now there are new reports the U.S. is considering sending 10,000 more troops to the Gulf. Devin Dwyer has our coverage tonight.
Today, just hours after Israel threatened to escalate and expand its campaign against Tehran, Iran's nuclear facilities coming under attack. Several new reports say the Pentagon is considering sending an additional 10,000 U.S. ground troops to the Middle East.
We can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops, but we are always going to be prepared to give the president maximum optionality and maximum opportunity to adjust to contingencies should they emerge.
And less than 24 hours after President Trump once again extended his deadline for Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz to shipping traffic, Iran today doubling down. A newsreader on state TV announcing the Islamic Republican Guard Navy closing the strait to any ships to and from ports of allies of the U.S. and Israel. 3 Chinese cargo ships were turned away today, and Iran is said to be tightening its chokehold on the strait with a toll booth policy, charging ships to pass through.
There are some in the Iranian regime that are going around saying that they want to make the Strait of Hormuz tolling thing, they want to make it permanent. That's unacceptable. The whole world should be outraged by it.
President Trump today hosting farmers at the White House.
I mean, how good is our military?
As American agriculture is being impacted by the war, hit by rising gas prices and fertilizer prices, as much of the world's fertilizer also passes through the Strait of Hormuz.
It's a definite shock to the system. I mean, when one of your main products that you need goes up 47% in 2 weeks, it's hard to digest that and adjust to that.
U.S. officials tell ABC News more than 300 service members have been injured so far, including 10 seriously. Most of those injuries are said to be traumatic brain injuries. The Pentagon says 13 Americans have been killed in action in the Iran war. Devin Dwyer, ABC News, Washington.
The commanding general for Marine Forces Reserve and Marine Forces South, Lieutenant General Leonard F. Anderson IV, published a letter on the 26th of March of 2026, addressing all the Marines under his command to emphasize the importance of immediate personal and unit readiness, especially due to the things that are happening globally right now, because a mass mobilization could become a reality. So I'm going to read this to you. 26 March 2026, Marines. Our nation is in a consequential moment. Global events are shaping our nation's security, and we must be ready. I ask you directly, are you truly ready to deploy, fight, and win? Are your skills sharp, your standards high, and your gear prepared for immediate movement? Is your Desert Marpat readily available? Is your gear packed and ready to pick up and move, or is it stored away in a corner of your home? Are your family affairs in order? When the call comes, readiness will be assumed, not questioned. Your readiness is not a declaration. It is a daily commitment. This is not a theoretical exercise. Our forces are currently engaged in operations connected to Iran and are positioned to preserve stability in the Western Hemisphere. Our enemies get a vote, and a mass mobilization could become reality. We are operating in this environment now. History demands our readiness today, tomorrow, and every day. Your preparation for combat is forged in your daily actions, your training, and the seriousness with which you handle every responsibility. We are measured not by our intentions, but by what we can do right now. Check your readiness, tighten your standards, prepare your family. Our nation expects a disciplined, capable force ready for immediate action. That force is Marine Forces Reserve. That standard begins with and must be held by you. Fights on.